We were hearing really from the very top, this wasn't necessarily her recollection.
Reputationally, for him, it was a massive turn-off. He became a joke.
From the very first second the story broke, you could feel it.
Meghan Markle, behind Prince Harry's bombshell statement that has blown up peace talks with Buckingham Palace.
That strange electric crackle that only hits when something massive is shifting behind palace walls. Reporters weren't breathing. Royal commentators were scrambling for air. Every notification dinged like an alarm bell. Because, suddenly, out of nowhere, the palace, the same palace that survives on silence, the same palace that responds to crisis with a raised eyebrow and a cup of Earl Grey, decided to speak. And when the palace speaks, you know something has gone terribly wrong. The world woke up to a single phrase lighting up social feeds. Sources confirm the prince experienced an emotional breaking point.
Because, Prince Harry is refusing, it seems, to play along with Meghan Markle's game.
Nobody needed the headline explained. Everyone knew exactly which prince they meant, Harry. And the timing? Oh, the timing was brutal. Because just hours before, Meghan had appeared at yet another polished conference, delivering yet another carefully constructed speech about reclaiming narrative power. Except this time, the delivery felt sharper, edgier, like even she was struggling to keep the facade from cracking. People noticed the clipped tone, the tight smile, the way she kept referencing being silenced in a room full of people who were literally there to hear her talk for 40 minutes straight. But that alone wouldn't have triggered a palace response. What did trigger it was something far deeper. According to palace insiders, the tipping point came during Harry and Meghan's latest attempt at rebranding, a glossy new campaign meant to reclaim their public image. But somewhere between the photo ops, the staged sincerity, and the dramatic pauses meant to rebuild trust, something inside Harry finally snapped.
You know, I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK, of course I do. And I think it's really...
Witnesses described him as visibly exhausted and emotionally frayed, with one claiming he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth. Meanwhile, Meghan, polished as always, kept pushing the talking points, correcting him mid-sentence, squeezing his arm whenever he veered even 1 millimeter off script. And honestly, people felt it through the screen. That kind of tension doesn't hide. It radiates. Twitter went nuclear. Why does he look like he's about to cry? He looks trapped. This is hard to watch. 10 minutes later, the clip hit TikTok. 30 minutes later, it had 2 million views. By noon, it was everywhere. And then the real shockwave. A palace aide, speaking in that classic chilly deadpan tone royals are practically born with, gave a quiet, devastating line to the press. The Duke has reached an emotional threshold. His well-being is now a priority concern. Nothing about Meghan, nothing accusatory. Just a single sentence that said far more than it appeared to. Suddenly, the world wasn't talking about branding or PR storms or podcast launches. The conversation shifted to Harry, the man, the son, the brother, and the unmistakable sense that he was cracking under pressure. Not royal pressure, not media pressure, personal pressure. Even tabloids softened for a moment, which is saying something. Commentators, usually merciless, paused their rehearsed outrage and said the same thing in different ways. He looks broken. And that's when the palace, the old guard, the machine, the carefully choreographed institution of centuries, quietly stepped in behind the scenes. You could almost sense the gears turning, not out of vengeance, not out of spite, but out of fear for one of their own.
When they were at the softball and the kiss cam came on. And a lot of people have commented on this, but I want to comment on the specific technique. And the specific technique is misdirection and laughter. And it's an old technique.
Sources claimed Harry reached out to an old confidant, someone from his pre-Meghan life, and the emotional dam simply burst. Not a dramatic scandal, not a soap operatic confession, but something far more human. He said he felt overwhelmed. He said he felt lost. He said he felt like he couldn't breathe. And those words, according to insiders, were the ones that sent alarms echoing across the palace corridors. Meanwhile, back in California, Meghan was reportedly furious at how the media interpreted the footage. Her team scrambled into action, attempting to rewrite the narrative with precision. Harry was fine. The couple was unbothered, and the rumors were baseless fabrications. Except the public wasn't buying it, because reactions weren't coming from tabloids anymore. They were coming from ordinary viewers, people with no agenda, people who simply saw pain on a man's face. One body language expert, and they come bursting out of the ground like mushrooms in times like these, said the clip showed classic signs of emotional fatigue, adding that Harry's shoulders telegraphed defeat. The clip was reanalyzed, slowed down, zoomed in, picked apart frame by frame. You could practically feel the world holding its breath, watching a prince who once radiated mischievous charm, now looking like a shadow of himself. Of course, Meghan supporters fought back online, insisting the public was misinterpreting normal exhaustion. But even her most loyal defenders couldn't explain the palace's sudden involvement, because the palace doesn't speak to defend drama. They speak when there's vulnerability. They speak when they sense danger. They speak when they fear a prince might be slipping out of reach. And that's exactly what this felt like. A man stretched too thin, carrying too much, locked in a life that doesn't fit but can't be escaped without consequences.
Prince William was correct to warn Prince Harry about his relationship with Meghan Markle.
Then, late that night, another leak hit the press. Harry had reportedly withdrawn from an upcoming appearance, citing personal reasons. This was big, huge. The Sussexes never cancel anything they can use for publicity. Ever. Commentators were stunned. X was on fire. Theories were multiplying by the second. Something was happening. Something real. Something raw. And the question everyone asked was the same. Did Meghan push him too far? Did the pressure finally crush him? And what exactly did the palace know, or fear, that made them step in now? Because whatever broke inside Harry didn't happen overnight. And it wasn't over. Not even close.
Fed up of being paraded around and...
The moment Harry canceled that appearance, the story detonated. Not a quiet ripple, not a polite murmur, a full-blown international earthquake. Phones buzzed nonstop. Morning shows scrapped their planned topics, and royal reporters who had just sat down with their coffee spat it out mid-sip. And while the world spiraled, Meghan made her move. She didn't wait. She didn't hesitate. She struck immediately with what insiders described as controlled fury. Her team blasted out an email insisting Harry was only resting, that the footage online was misleading, and that the palace statement was misinterpreted. Except here's the problem. Nobody ever misinterprets a palace statement. Those things are crafted word by word by a small army of PR wizards who spend their lives calculating emotional fallout. If they hint that Harry is struggling, they mean exactly that and more.
Magically get better on their own and everyone else will figure it out so that he doesn't have to? That sounds like his life.
People weren't buying Meghan's spin. They never do when a story feels this raw. Still, Meghan doubled down. She popped up in front of cameras at a charity event looking hyper-polished. Hair flawless, smile calibrated. The whole everything is perfect energy turned to maximum brightness. But her eyes? Oof. Even through the screen, viewers saw something wild flickering there. Frustration simmering just beneath the glossy exterior. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the palace machine was spinning faster than it had in years. A confidential meeting was held between William, senior advisors, and mental health specialists, not to strategize against Meghan, but to protect Harry. People forget. Whatever drama exists, William still sees Harry as his little brother, a brother he grew up protecting, a brother he still worries about, even after everything. Insiders whispered that William wanted to reach out directly, but advisors warned it could backfire, triggering more stress or accusations of interference. So instead, the palace prepared a public gesture. Subtle, elegant, perfectly British. They released an old photo of the brothers at a charity event, smiling, arms around each other. No caption, no explanation, just a reminder of who Harry used to be. And the internet lost its mind. William's extending an olive branch. Is this a lifeline? The palace is signaling support. Is Harry coming home? On social media, hashtags exploded. Hashtag bring Harry home. Hashtag free Harry. Hashtag support the prince. That's when the real panic hit Meghan's camp. Because for the first time in a long time, public sympathy wasn't with her. It was with him. The narrative wasn't Meghan versus the palace anymore. It was, "Harry is breaking, and the palace is trying to save him."
I think he's just living in the past. Meghan told him that and told us that he's still very...
Her PR team scrambled into DEFCON 1. New photos magically appeared online showing Meghan and Harry laughing together in Montecito. Though people quickly pointed out, Harry's smile looked oddly strained, and his hand placement looked directional, like someone told him where to put it. Within minutes, the memes rolled in. TikTok zoomed in on Harry's expression like they were analyzing FBI surveillance footage. Twitter roasted the photo shoot lighting. Instagram accounts whispered the obvious. He looks checked out. Meanwhile, the palace wasn't done. A second insider leak hit the press, claiming Harry had expressed longing for stability and homesickness for the UK. The phrasing didn't sound like Meghan's language. It didn't sound like Harry's either. It sounded like a message, a very carefully crafted message. A warning shot across the Atlantic, and Meghan knew it.
That Prince Harry is planning a shameless return to the UK in 2026, with a plan to, and I quote, sow the seeds for a semi-permanent return.
That evening, she reportedly stormed through the Montecito estate in full meltdown mode, demanding to know which staff members might be quietly feeding information to London. Tensions skyrocketed. Voices were raised. The atmosphere was combustible. According to one witness, Harry, meanwhile, slipped into his home office and shut the door behind him. Not to call Meghan's PR team, not to prepare a statement, not to plan damage control, but to call someone from the UK, someone who knew him before all this. And after that call, the emotional dam finally broke. Sources whispered that Harry cried, not out of anger, but out of sheer, suffocating exhaustion. He confessed he felt torn between two worlds, between two identities, between two futures, and worst of all, between two loyalties. When he finally walked back into the hallway, Meghan was standing there, arms crossed, waiting. "Are you with me?" she asked. "Or against me?" It was the question he had feared for years. And the world, the press, the palace, the internet, the entire global stage held its breath, because Harry's answer would shape everything that came next. Harry didn't answer Meghan immediately. In fact, he didn't answer at all. He walked past her, not rudely, not aggressively, but with the slow, numb steps of someone whose mind is somewhere else entirely. And Meghan hated that more than any argument. Silence was her enemy. Silence meant she was no longer steering the scene, and for the first time since moving to America, she wasn't steering him either. She followed him down the hallway, her frustration sharpening at every step. But before she could corner him, something else erupted, louder, faster, and far more dangerous: the leak.
Harry wants to go back to the UK so bad, it's scary. He's on the verge of a mental breakdown.
Someone, and to this day nobody can agree who, provided a journalist with explosive details from Harry's emotional phone call to the UK. Not the full conversation, not the private substance, but enough to start a wildfire. Prince Harry has privately reached out for guidance as he navigates emotional strain. He is said to feel caught between roles and longing for steadiness. Senior royal aides are preparing for multiple possible outcomes. Those 3 lines were all it took. Within minutes, #PrayForHarry trended worldwide. Talk shows halted mid-segment to address the breaking update. Even late-night comedians paused the jokes, blinking in disbelief. And Meghan? Oh, she felt that earthquake? Because this leak didn't paint her as a villain, it painted her as irrelevant. This wasn't Meghan versus the palace. This wasn't Meghan's PR blaming the firm. This was entirely about Harry's emotional state, and it positioned him in the center of a global sympathy wave she couldn't control. Her team scrambled. First denial, then reframing, then gentle downplaying. But it didn't matter. People were hungry for the story of a wounded prince grappling with two worlds. And for once, the spotlight wasn't on Meghan. And that might have been the thing that rattled her most. Because while Meghan thrives in applause, Harry thrives in protection. And protection is exactly what the palace subtly offered him that day. Behind closed doors at Buckingham Palace, William reportedly paced the room, jaw tight, looking older than his years, not with anger, but with worry. Advisors debated protocols. Some urged caution, others urged decisive action. William just wanted the truth. Is he safe? That question alone shook the room. Meanwhile, Meghan was pacing too, but for a different reason. She wasn't losing followers. She wasn't losing brand deals. She wasn't even losing media control. She was losing narrative gravity. For the first time since the royal exit, the story wasn't orbiting her. And she wasn't about to let that continue. That evening, Meghan demanded an emergency call with her PR chiefs. What followed, according to insiders, was intense. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She didn't crumble. She strategized like a general planning a counterattack. And so while Meghan was plotting a media counterstrike, Harry was hiding in the garden, alone. Sitting on the stone step near the olive trees, he stared into the Montecito dusk with a hollow, faraway look. The kind you don't fake. The kind you can't PR polish. This wasn't about royal protocol anymore. This wasn't about TV deals. This wasn't about Meghan's brand or the firm's image. This was a man reaching the limit of how much weight he could carry. And that's when the next blow landed. A royal source, anonymous, strategic, and chillingly calm, gave one quiet sentence to a respected newspaper. There are growing concerns for the Duke's long-term well-being.
Just as the court decision is out.
That was it. That single line, and it changed everything. Suddenly, it wasn't just gossip, it wasn't just drama, it wasn't just royal intrigue. It was a mental health alarm being raised by the very institution Meghan spent years accusing. Hollywood took notice, political commentators took notice, even people who had no interest in the royals stopped scrolling. And Meghan? Her worry turned into something sharper. Because now she wasn't just losing narrative control. She wasn't just losing public sympathy. She was losing something far more terrifying, the ability to predict Harry. She had no idea what he had said on that call to the UK. No idea who he called after. No idea how much pressure he was carrying internally. No idea which part of him was cracking and which part was reaching out. And the palace? Oh, the palace smelled blood in the water. Not maliciously, not gleefully, not politically, but protectively. They moved quietly, subtly, like a shadow lowering itself between Harry and the storm. That night, 3 cars pulled into a side entrance at Kensington. Senior advisors summoned for late-night consultations. Nobody confirmed the topic. Nobody denied it either. But one insider left the building at 3 a.m., pale-faced, whispering into their phone. It's worse than we thought. Harry woke up before sunrise, not because of the noise, not because of stress, but because his phone had vibrated non-stop through the night. He didn't check any of the texts at first. He just sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at the muted glow leaking through the Montecito curtains. Meghan was still asleep, breathing evenly, unaware of the tidal wave about to hit them both. When Harry finally opened his messages, he didn't start with the celebrities or the journalists or the agents trying to take the temperature. He opened the thread from someone he hadn't heard from in weeks, William. There were only 3 messages. Call me when you can. We're concerned. This is not a battle. We just want you safe. Harry's eyes lingered on that last line. Not angry, not accusatory, not strategic, just protective. That was the moment something inside him loosened, like a buckle he didn't realize was cinched too tightly. But before he could reply, the next blow hit. A major London outlet dropped an article at 6:02 a.m. UK time, midnight in California, and the headline lit up Harry's screen like a flare. Palace source: Harry is at risk of collapse if tensions continue. No blame, no scandal, just a stark clinical warning. And mysteriously, nobody in the palace denied it. Harry shut his eyes, exhaling. This was turning into something bigger than a feud, bigger than PR, bigger than Meghan's panic. Across the hallway, he could hear her stirring. He knew within minutes she'd be up, fully charged, ready to go into crisis mode. And that terrified him. Not because she meant harm, but because he simply didn't have any more strength to give. When she finally walked into the kitchen, the sunlight hitting her face, her expression instantly darkened.
She's been inundated with offers for movies over the 8 years since she retired from showbiz.
She wasn't yelling. That was the scary part. Her voice was steady, calm, almost surgical. The tone she used when she believed she was the only one truly seeing the battlefield. Harry finally looked at her. Really looked at her. "I just need a minute," he whispered. But Meghan wasn't wired for a minute. Not today. Not after the leaks, the headlines, the sympathy erupting around her husband. A sympathy she couldn't control, couldn't shape, couldn't redirect. She reached for her phone with the same determination she'd used before a major PR push. Harry knew what that meant. "Meghan, don't," he said. She didn't pause. "If I don't step in now, they'll own the story." "Let them," he murmured. Those two words froze the room. Because that wasn't just exhaustion speaking. It wasn't defeat. It was liberation. He wasn't choosing the palace over her. He wasn't choosing America over Britain. He wasn't choosing media silence over strategy. He was choosing peace. And peace was the one weapon Meghan didn't know how to fight. That line, that single line, would later become the headline of 1,000 talk shows, opinion panels, and royal analyses. But right now, it was only for her, and she hated how honest it was. Before either of them could continue, Harry's phone buzzed again. This time, it was from his UK security liaison, a short, clipped message. "Statement incoming. Approved by senior office. Not hostile." Meghan inhaled sharply. "They're releasing something without coordinating with us," Harry swallowed. "They don't have to coordinate with us." And just like that, the shift became undeniable. Because 10 minutes later, Buckingham Palace posted a brief, carefully worded message across all official platforms. "The Duke of Sussex remains a cherished member of the family. We ask the public respectfully to give him the space and compassion he deserves as he manages private challenges. No shade, no accusations, just humanity." And that was the real power play. Not anger, not punishment, not revenge. Kindness weaponized in the most elegant way possible. Harry's eyes softened, because for the first time in years, the palace wasn't treating him like a defector or a liability. They treated him like a son, a brother, a man who needed room to breathe. Social media exploded. Pundits scrambled. Meghan's team started sending her frantic drafts for responses, but Harry just sat down quietly, peacefully, as if that one statement had lifted the weight of 6 years off his shoulders. And for Meghan, that was the moment the ground finally cracked, because she realized something devastating. The palace wasn't fighting her anymore. They weren't trying to expose her. They weren't trying to silence her. They weren't even trying to pull Harry back. They were simply reminding the world, and reminding him, that he had a place he didn't have to defend, a place where he didn't have to perform, a place where he didn't have to spin, a place where he didn't have to be strong every second of every day. And for the first time, Meghan wasn't just losing the narrative. She was losing Harry's fear. Because once a man stops being afraid of disappointing you, he becomes very, very hard to control. The palace corridors were buzzing in a way they hadn't been in decades. Even the usually stoic aides were whispering to one another, glancing over their shoulders as if the walls themselves might leak secrets to the world. Harry's meltdown had gone beyond private anguish. It had become a full-blown spectacle, a living, breathing drama that no one in the royal family had anticipated. Courtiers exchanged anxious looks, some sympathetic, some bewildered, because no one had ever seen the Duke of Sussex unravel like this in front of the inner circle. Reports trickled in that Meghan had issued a series of new demands, unprecedented, audacious, and increasingly controlling. Staffers described her as meticulous to the point of obsession, issuing instructions not just for appearances and speeches, but for Harry's schedule, interactions with family members, and even casual social outings. Insiders claimed she was reviewing every letter, call, and text Harry sent, allegedly insisting on approvals for conversations he had once handled freely. Sources whispered that Harry's once confident demeanor had eroded under the strain. It wasn't just about public image anymore. It was about the constant pressure to comply, to perform, to avoid what Meghan would perceive as errors. The palace's response, as expected, was discreet but deliberate. Senior aides were called in for emergency meetings. There were quiet consultations with psychological experts familiar with the pressures of royal life, and some counselors reportedly suggested a form of protective space be created for Harry, away from constant scrutiny. But the challenge wasn't just logistical, it was political. Any overt intervention risked escalating tension with Meghan, whose public narrative had increasingly painted the royal family as oppressive, controlling, and archaic. Meanwhile, the media smelled blood. Royal correspondents, gossip columnists, and online influencers converged on any sign of strain, magnifying every instance of Harry's visible discomfort. A simple misstep, a grimace, a distracted wave, became a viral sensation overnight. Headlines screamed about the Duke in distress and, quote, royal family on edge, while social media users dissected every frame from public appearances, relentlessly analyzing body language and facial expressions. The scrutiny only added to Harry's mounting pressure. And for Meghan, it seemed like a confirmation that her influence and control was absolute. Even insiders closest to Harry admitted the tension was palpable. Private moments with family members became orchestrated, brief, and heavily monitored. Cousins, childhood friends, and even staff who had worked with him for years reportedly noted a stark change. He used to joke, laugh, and genuinely enjoy moments, one source said. Now every interaction is measured, calculated, like he's performing for her, not himself for the family. Yet the drama wasn't confined to the palace walls. International media outlets were quick to pick up on subtle leaks, with rumors ranging from alleged ultimatums to whispered threats of public statements. Each story painted a picture of Harry caught in an invisible cage, torn between loyalty, love, and the unyielding pressure of his circumstances. Public opinion, predictably, was divided. Some expressed sympathy, framing the situation as a tragic love story gone wrong. Others criticized him for allowing himself to be manipulated, reflecting a growing discourse on personal responsibility versus influence. Inside Buckingham Palace, the senior staff faced a delicate balancing act. They had to maintain discretion, protect the Duke's well-being, and ensure that any interventions did not escalate the situation further. Advisors reportedly debated whether to confront Meghan directly, create private buffers for Harry, or even stage temporary respites from public duties. No option seemed risk-free. The intensity of Meghan's control reached its apex during a private family gathering. According to sources, observers described Harry as physically and emotionally drained, attempting to participate while simultaneously adhering to her precise expectations. Staffers recalled him muttering under his breath, attempting to maintain composure, but ultimately breaking down when asked to conform to yet another rigid schedule of social interactions. Some witnesses reported that his hands shook, his jaw tightened, and tears welled repeatedly, a visible manifestation of the internal conflict that had become increasingly unbearable. In these moments, the palace realized that Harry's well-being was no longer just a private matter. It was a national concern. The public, while sympathetic to the royal family in general, had been conditioned by years of media portrayal to see Meghan as a force capable of exerting unprecedented influence over her husband. The narrative was potent, almost mythical, a royal prince under the spell of a woman whose calculated control appeared to dictate his every move. Senior aides reportedly escalated the matter to discussions with the king, who faced an unenviable position, intervened too openly, and Meghan could spin the narrative of intrusion and persecution, do nothing, and Harry's health, and by extension the stability of the monarchy, risked deterioration. Strategists considered quiet interventions, private council sessions, the introduction of neutral advisors, and carefully timed public appearances designed to restore confidence without provoking confrontation. Meanwhile, Meghan's team remained steadfast in their strategy. Advisors close to her emphasized that every public interaction, every media statement, and every social appearance was meticulously orchestrated. Leaks to tabloids were carefully calculated, interviews strategically edited, and social media narratives tightly controlled. Insiders revealed that she viewed Harry's vulnerability not as weakness, but as a tactical advantage, a way to reinforce the narrative that she was central to the public perception of the couple's success and relevance. By this point, even close friends reportedly noticed the strain. Calls to trusted confidants became shorter, laughter less frequent, and Harry's personal spontaneity, once a hallmark of his charm, faded. One longtime family friend commented, He's still Harry, but the spark is dimmer. Every smile seems rehearsed, every interaction measured. It's heartbreaking. As whispers of the meltdown circulated, the palace acted with the same discretion that had governed centuries of sensitive royal matters. Security was subtly increased. Advisors rotated through private sessions with Harry, and mechanisms were established to filter communications, ensuring that potentially inflammatory messages never reached him unchecked. The goal was clear: contain the psychological impact while preventing the drama from spilling further into public consciousness. And yet the public remained ravenous for details. Every leaked anecdote became fodder for analysis. Every private glance and a public photo dissected for meaning. Social media erupted in speculation. Hashtags trended. Fan pages theorized. And commentary sections overflowed with speculation about the cause, intensity, and implications of Harry's visible breakdown. While the palace worked behind the scenes, the court of public opinion operated with relentless scrutiny, amplifying the stakes and heightening the tension. By the end of this tumultuous period, it became clear that the crisis had reached a critical point. Harry's breakdown was no longer just a private struggle. It had evolved into a complex drama involving personal relationships, public perception, and the institution itself. Meghan's influence, whether viewed as protective, manipulative, or strategic, had reshaped the narrative around the Duke, leaving insiders and the public alike questioning not just his role in the monarchy, but his very autonomy. As aides and advisors continued to navigate the precarious balance between intervention and discretion, one truth became undeniable: the royal family had entered uncharted territory. Harry's vulnerability, once confined to private moments, had now become a public spectacle, and the palace's careful strategies were being tested like never before. The coming days promised further drama, difficult decisions, and the potential for revelations that could redefine the relationship between Meghan, Harry, and the institution itself. This was no ordinary family tension. This was a seismic shift, a collision of personal desire, public expectation, and institutional pressure. And in the eye of this storm, Harry's humanity, his fears, frustrations, and heartbreak, was laid bare for all to see, forcing the palace to confront a reality that even centuries of protocol and tradition could not fully mitigate.